On a misty March morning in the year 1803, the waves along Japan's eastern shoreline were unusually restless, not with storms or wind, but with something else, something the local fishermen had never seen before. As the early fog lifted and the tide drew closer to the rocks, they spotted it. Drifting slowly, like it had no intention of arriving anywhere at all, was a vessel, but not a boat, not really. It was round, almost perfectly so, made of polished metal and lacquered wood. Its walls were embedded with glass panels, glinting like ancient jewels. It looked less like a ship and more like a ceremonial relic, something built not for the sea but for a ritual or a warning. The fishermen stared in silence. Then curiosity overcame fear. They hauled it to shore, and inside they found her, a woman. She stood just 5 feet tall, her skin pale like snow under moonlight. Her hair burned a deep red, darker than wine, closer to dried blood. She wore strange clothing and held tightly a box of smooth, dark wood, no more than 2 feet in length. She didn't cry, didn't speak words anyone could understand. And in her silence, she terrified them even more. The villagers gathered. They murmured. Some bowed, some backed away. Others whispered legends. No one had ever seen anything like her. Not in their lives, not in their history, not in their stories. And so began one of Japan's oldest and eeriest unsolved mysteries, the legend of Utsuro-Bune, the hollow ship. For centuries, this tale has drifted between folklore and fact. Too strange to be accepted as history, too specific to be dismissed as myth. It was carefully documented in official Edo-period texts by multiple authors, in multiple provinces, separated by hundreds of miles. But the real question isn't whether it happened. The real question is, what exactly happened? Who was this woman? Where did she come from? And what was inside the box she never let go? Some believe she was a princess, exiled for a forbidden love. Others say she was a messenger from a long-lost civilization. A few believe something even stranger, something from the stars. This is not just a ghost story. It's not science fiction, and it's not an ancient fairy tale either. It's something in between. A story written down before the modern world ever imagined UFOs or extraterrestrial life. A story filled with strange craft, unidentifiable language, and a woman who, by all known accounts, should not have existed. Today we open the box, not the literal one she held, but the box of memory, myth, and mystery that surrounds her. Because when you look closely enough, you'll see that what washed ashore in 1803 was not just a woman. It was a question, and 200 years later, we still haven't answered it. Welcome to 100K Wise, where today's mystery takes us beyond legend, into the haunting question of not just who she was, but why she came. What drifted ashore that morning wasn't a boat, at least, not in any traditional sense. It was round, about 18 feet long and 11 feet high, with a dark metallic base and an upper shell of lacquered wood. Along its curved walls were glass-like windows, perfectly clear and evenly spaced, joined in a way that defied the craftsmanship of the time. The villagers had seen ships, barges, and fishing vessels, but never anything like this. It looked more like a sealed chamber or a message in itself. Inside sat a woman. She emerged slowly, calm and composed. She was small, no more than 5 feet tall, with skin so pale it almost shimmered in the light. Her hair was deep red, thick and flowing, the kind of color rarely, if ever, seen in Japan. Her clothes were unfamiliar, her features foreign, and she spoke, but no one could understand her. Her language was smooth and melodic, completely unlike Japanese, Chinese, or even the European tongues known in port cities like Nagasaki. But perhaps the most unsettling detail was the box she carried. Roughly 2 feet long, made of a rich, dark wood, it was held tightly in her arms. She never put it down, never opened it, never let anyone near it. When villagers stepped inside the vessel, they found supplies. Water, preserved food, and a series of strange symbols etched into the inner walls. Not decorative, not religious, They looked like a form of writing, careful, deliberate, and utterly unknown. It was clear. This woman hadn't just washed up by chance. She was sent, but for what reason and by whom remained a complete mystery. She sat silently in the vessel, arms wrapped around the box, as dozens of villagers started on, unsure if they were witnessing a miracle or something far more dangerous. As the day wore on, the village remained suspended in a kind of uneasy stillness. People came and went, taking turns watching the strange vessel from a cautious distance, whispering theories with the kind of reverence usually reserved for shrines or the dead. But the woman, she never moved. She sat exactly where she had been, legs folded neatly beneath her, back straight, the wooden box still held tight in her arms. Her expression was unreadable, not frightened, not pleading, simply present. As though she were waiting for something no one else could see. The elders of the village gathered in a hushed council. Beneath the thatched roof of a weather-worn meeting house, they debated quietly, careful not to let their fear show. This was not just a strange visitor. This was a problem. Because in 1803, Japan was not like the rest of the world. It was closed. Under the strict Sakoku policy, no foreigner was allowed to enter the country, and no Japanese was allowed to leave. It was a time of extreme isolation, where even a harmless interaction with an outsider could be viewed as a violation of imperial law. If the central authorities learned that a small fishing village had made contact with a foreign woman, let alone sheltered her, it would not matter how peaceful she appeared. The punishment could be devastating. Entire villages had vanished from maps for lesser offenses. Men were beheaded, women imprisoned, children sent away. The message was always the same. No foreign touch would be tolerated, not even one that arrived by sea, wrapped in silence. One elder, older than the rest, spoke what others were afraid to say. If she truly came from the waves, then to the waves she must return. There was no anger in his voice, no hatred, only resignation, as though the sea had given them a question they were never meant to answer. And so, just as quietly as they had received her, they made a decision. They would send her back. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't dare. The next morning, under gray skies, the villagers gathered once more on the beach. The strange craft, now referred to in whispers as Utsuro-Bune, the hollow ship, was pulled gently to the water's edge. The woman did not protest. She stepped back inside, sat in the same position, arms still wrapped around the box. No words were spoken, no goodbyes offered. The tide took hold, and the vessel drifted out once more into the mist, just as it had arrived. And within minutes she was gone, as though she had never existed at all. But some villagers never forgot, not the way the wind shifted when she stepped ashore, not the way her eyes met theirs, calm, knowing, impossibly human. And not the sound of silence that followed after she left. What they had witnessed was more than a visitor. It was a rupture, however brief, in the boundary between the known and the unknowable. And that boundary had drifted back out to sea. Most legends fade. They blur over time, distorted by memory, softened by repetition, lost in the noise of newer stories. But not this one. The tale of the red-haired woman and the hollow ship did not vanish. It multiplied. Within just a few decades of the incident, her story began appearing in official Japanese texts, historical manuscripts, not folk tales. These weren't scribbled rumors passed from village to village. They were bound volumes, recorded during the Edo-period, written by educated men in elegant brush strokes on rice paper. She appeared in at least 3 different sources: Oshu, Zlaki, and Tone Shostsu. Each version carried slight variations, as if the story had drifted from one shoreline to another, retold by different voices, but the core elements remained strangely identical: a circular vessel, a mysterious woman, unintelligible language, and a sealed wooden box. Over time, scholars began to notice something unnerving. The details hadn't grown more exaggerated, they had stayed the same. as though no matter who told the story, some part of it refused to change. By the 19th century, intellectuals in Japan, men trained to separate myth from truth, began to take the Utsuro-Bune account seriously. They posed questions that had no satisfying answers. Who could have built a vessel like this in the year 1803? Why were there no visible controls, no sails, no oars? What materials made up the transparent walls, and how did they remain intact in the open sea? The more they looked, the stranger it became. This was not a weather balloon, a raft, or a trade ship. It wasn't even clearly meant to float. It was something else entirely. And if the vessel didn't come from Japan, where did it come from? One theory pointed north, to Russia. During that period, Japan remained deeply suspicious of foreign presence, but reports from Nagasaki and surrounding ports noted occasional contact with Dutch traders, and through them, information about Russia sometimes trickled in. Russian noblewomen of the late 18th century were often described with pale skin, red or auburn hair, and dressed in elaborate winter garments trimmed with fur. Some even used symbolic scripts for personal letters, forms of shorthand or calligraphy unknown in the East. A Japanese sailor named Daiu Kaido, who had been shipwrecked and stranded in Russia for nearly a decade, later reported seeing women with red hair and unfamiliar writing habits. He spoke of fur-lined coats, strange etiquette, and circular religious icons, some of which resembled the symbols etched into the inner walls of the Utsuro-Bune. Could it be that she was Russian, perhaps an exile, a fallen aristocrat, or someone smuggled away from a court scandal too large to survive? This theory was compelling, but not complete, because no Russian ship of the time matched the design of the vessel. No maritime record told of a missing noblewoman. And most importantly, no one could explain the box, and so the mystery deepened. The closer scholars came to solving it, the more the answers unraveled into further questions. What if the vessel had come from further than Russia, or not from Earth at all? But that idea, at least for now, remained unspoken. It would take another century before anyone dared to say it aloud. While some scholars turned their eyes outward, to foreign lands and distant empires, others looked inward, into the folds of Japan's own forgotten past. Hidden among ancient family records and local myths was a tale almost too similar to ignore. It spoke not of the 1800s, but of the 7th century, nearly 1,000 years before the red-haired woman arrived. According to this legend, a fisherman from the island of Shikoku rescued a young girl adrift at sea. She was only 13, found alone in a small, hollow boat, circular, with no sail, no oars. She claimed to be the daughter of a Chinese emperor, cast away by her jealous stepmother. The locals of Edo province sheltered her. She grew up, married a local prince, and gave birth to a son. That son would become the founder of the Kono clan, an actual noble family that ruled much of Shikoku for centuries. To most, it was a folktale. A symbolic origin story like so many others. But then, researchers began uncovering fragments, old genealogies, faded ink illustrations, records describing a round vessel and a girl whose features were described as not quite Japanese. Even the script found in some preserved scrolls bore unfamiliar strokes, soft, curved, flowing, not unlike the markings from the Utsuro-Bune. Was this an echo of the same event, or had it happened before? If true, the implications were staggering. Two separate accounts, nearly a millennium apart. Two mysterious women, each arriving in a hollow vessel, both with unknown origins, both carry secrets. Both changing the course of a place they had no reason to find, and both stories, quietly documented, not shouted from temples, not etched into monuments, just written down patiently by those who knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, even if they couldn't explain it. But for every thread that tied the Utsuro-Bune to earthly history, another thread pointed somewhere else, because no matter how far back the researchers looked, they still couldn't answer one simple question. Who builds a vessel with no rudder, no oars, no sails, yet sealed precise and seemingly unaged? It was a boat in shape only. By design, it felt deliberate, engineered, as if it were not meant to be controlled by its passenger, but sent set adrift like a message in a bottle, or a test. And the woman, she was never confused, never afraid, she never pleaded for help, she simply watched, as if she had been here before. The Edo-period records described the Utsuro-Bune in eerie detail. The base dark metal, smooth as obsidian, the top lacquered wood, perfectly curved, the windows transparent, joined seamlessly into a circular shell. There were no rudders, no sails, no visible propulsion, no sign that it was ever meant to be steered. It was, in every sense, unlike anything humans had created at the time. And then there were the illustrations. Found in 3 separate manuscripts from the early 1800s, each drawing captured the same thing: a round, domed craft with glass-like windows and a woman seated inside. If you showed them to someone today, they wouldn't say ancient boat. They'd say flying saucer, a century before the word UFO even existed. The image was already here, linked onto yellowed scrolls in isolationist Japan. For over 200 years, the Utsuro-Bune story has resisted categorization. It is not fully a myth, but not fully history. It sits in between. In that quiet, unnerving space where the human mind reaches its edge, and something else begins to whisper. Was she an exiled princess, a forgotten traveler from across the sea, or was she something even stranger? A passenger from beyond the world we know. We may never open the box she held. But the real box was opened long ago. The one inside us filled with questions we still don't know how to ask, because maybe the point was never to answer it. Maybe we were just meant to remember it, to wonder, and so we ask. If something like the Utsuro-Bune truly came once, could it come again, or has it already returned? In forms we've failed to recognize. Thank you for staying with us through the end of this mystery. Don't forget to subscribe to 100K Wise, where stories like this aren't just remembered. They're reopened, and until the next one, keep your eyes open, because the sea is never truly silent.